speaker and community servant. He's the founder and solution architect of Certified ACE and president of Nichols Global Enterprise. Nichols is the co-founder of TN Tech Canada, one of Canada's leading distributors of on-site paging systems. In 2011, he was profiled on Who's Who in Black Canada as a prominent Black Canadian. And in 2014, was recognized by Metro News as a Torontonian making a difference in Canada's Certified ACE. Having defied the odds, Ricky is set out to educate individuals on the importance of education and giving back through workshops, facilitation, speaking appearances, and volunteering. So from Toronto, Ricky, thanks for coming, man.
So I'm going to start. Can I close it up?
Yes, of course.
I'm going to take you guys back to when I was in my 4th year of university at University of Toronto. I came into class one day, and the professor had a quote on the board. The factory of the future had 2 employees, a man and a dog. The man to feed the dog, and the dog to make sure the man doesn't touch any of the equipment. So me sitting in that class, I thought to myself, well, I want to build the factory of the future. That would be pretty cool, have everything fully automated. So fast forward about 12 years. I'm 30 now, I've started 7 companies. Some of them very successful, some of them failed, but I learned a lot along the way. So what you're going to get out of today is really a business model that works. What I love to do, and my aha moment in life, after working 16 hours building businesses, 16 hours a day building businesses, was that time is more important than money. Obviously, time is non-renewable. Money is. You can lose it, you can get it back. But the time is the most important thing. So what I love to do is my time. Use my time. So I spend the winter is traveling all over the world, and the summer is relaxing, and I kind of just work on fall and spring. So that's kind of the philosophy, and any new business that I take in today, I follow a certain philosophy in order to make sure that I have my time while I have the money to do what I want. So today I'm going to go through 8 laws, and I'm going to give you 2 examples of 2 of my businesses. One is TN Tech Canada, and one is short-term stays. TN Tech Canada is one of my first successful ventures, and short-term stays is my latest, to kind of give you a concept of how I think and how it's consistent. So the first law is that the business model must allow the possibility to do the work once and get paid forever. So when I think about this, everything that I'm doing in my time is building a pipeline. So an example of this would be if I was tasked with, in a small town to basically deliver water from one part of the town to the city. I have 2 options. I can either get a bucket, get the water, and bring the bucket over, and I get paid every time I deliver, let's say, a liter of water. So every day I can trade my time and deliver buckets of water back and forth. I can hire people to do that. Or I can build a business on Autopilot and build a pipeline. So my first example I want to talk about is TN Tech. So when I started TN Tech is the largest distributor of on-site paging systems in Canada. So you go to a restaurant like the Keg, the Baton Rouge, you're waiting for a table, you get a pager, you sit down, when the table's ready, that pager vibrates. That's my company. You go to Sharpest Drug Mart, you're waiting for a prescription, you give you a pager. When your prescription's ready, it buzzes, and then you go get your prescription. That's my company. When we started that company back in 2007, my business partner, we understood that the objective was to basically do the work once and get paid forever. One of the biggest challenges for a lot of big restaurants was that they bought maybe 10 to 15 of these pagers a month at $100 a piece, but guests sometimes drop them on the floor, they break, they don't come back, and they lose them. So one of the biggest things in the industry right then was people kept calling to reorder pagers. So it was a lot of ongoing business. Once you get a customer, because they keep losing pagers, general managers are calling to order pagers. Now the problem is that general managers don't necessarily care about the pagers as much as the food and the operations. It's a very small part of their business, so it's a big hassle for them. So what we decided was to turn the business into some sort of subscription-based model, where we can forecast how many pagers you're losing and then automatically ship you what you lose. And then you pay a fixed amount, you don't have to worry about the customer service. So that was the approach that we took to say, you know what, instead of constantly trying to sell pagers, let's just sell these subscriptions. And once we sell the subscriptions, then after we basically have reoccurring revenue. We do the work once to sell the subscription, we get paid forever. That's one model. The next example I want to give is short-term stays. So everybody's familiar with Airbnb, right? The Airbnb market has really shifted a lot, the hotel industry, and even the way we use accommodations. So because I travel a lot, 2 years ago I decided my place was always vacant. So I decided to lease my condo or rent my condo on an Airbnb while I was traveling. And rightfully, what happened was that I started to make more leasing my condo at the time. I actually made enough money to cover my lease plus pay for another lease. And I saw the opportunity that Airbnb can actually, basically make me live for free, in theory. And then I basically got into the business of short-term rentals. So today I have 17 properties in Toronto and Ottawa that I rent out full-time short-term rentals. But what was happening was Airbnb market started to get saturated. So everybody's on Airbnb now, so prices start to drop, right? Supply and demand. And then Expedia and Booking.com, these big companies that traditionally service hotels, have said that, you know what, we don't want to ignore this, let's get into this game as well. Now, people that use Airbnb, it's a great platform, and they take care of a lot for the host. So from the host, I list my property, they take care of ID verification, they take care of the payment, and they basically give me a payout. But Expedia and Booking.com, they traditionally work with hotels, so they do nothing for you. You need to have a merchant account, you have to do payment processing on your own, you basically have to verify your guests on your own, you're pretty much on your own. The difference is, when I decided to scale my business, because I had 10 properties, I went to this venture to list myself on Expedia and Booking.com and ran into a whole bunch of problems. Number one problem was synchronizing calendars, because now I can get double bookings because I'm on multiple channels. Now, second problem was payment processing and handling fraud, all these things. So I decided that I was going to build a company called Short-Term Stays to really make the life outside of Airbnb as easy as Airbnb for a lot of my clients. So one of my core businesses today, and the latest one, is literally taking people who are just on Airbnb, and I'm saying, I'm going to go do more bookings. And I'll list you on my 30 other channels, Booking.com and Expedia, Travelocity, hotels, you name it. You get a booking, I collect the payment for you, and I pay you out, and I take my commission. Okay? That's the core business model. So the other example of this is literally building the technology that I can get the client from Airbnb, do the work once, and then get paid forever of all their future bookings. Okay? We're good so far? So the other concept that I've learned, and I've went through a lot of hiring, a lot of HR, and that's the biggest headache. Back to the factory of the future, there's no employees, just a dog. So the business model must allow you to scale the business and grow overnight without the need for hiring. So what does that mean? The first example I want to give you is TN Tech. We basically had to go to individual restaurants to sell these care programs, right? So it's a lot of knocking on doors and a lot of direct sales. And we realized that in order for us to grow nationally, we need to hire more people to reach more doors and knock on more doors, increase the funnel. Then I thought to myself, well, how can I grow this business overnight without hiring anybody? And I thought to myself, business and sales is all about relationships. Who has the best relationships with general managers of restaurants? Well, what do they buy the most of? Well, they buy food. Well, who's the largest food distributor? Well, Cisco. So I spent 3 months getting in the room with the director at Cisco to say, hey, we have these pagers. Your clients can use these pagers because it'll help them increase their profits. Why? Because the restaurant's about turning tables. They want people to come in and get out as quickly as possible. And part of that process is if you're waiting for a table, they got to call you or they got to run around for you. They basically have that table vacant for 15, 10 minutes. Right? The idea is that if you have the pager, they can buzz you wherever you are, you come back, and your table's ready. That reduces the wait time on that table. The utilization of that table increases. So the value is, well, if you can make your restaurants more money, then you can actually sell them more food. So Cisco Canada, why don't you have your sales rep carry our brochures to your general managers, and then we'll give them a commission of every sale that they make. So from going from, basically a business with a few sales reps to overnight having 1,000 sales reps with the best relationships in the market, because the guy who sells them food, I'm pretty sure knows about his daughter's kindergarten graduation and knows them very, very well, because that's a big part of their business. So the whole idea, if you're thinking about this, is how do you approach your business with the right model that can allow you to scale overnight without hiring anybody? And that's one of the most important things that I've learned, and that's channel sales and building those relationships strategically. You build a relationship once and you get paid forever. So we're going to start building on these laws, but this is the way you should approach your business models. The other aspect of short-term stays is the example here for growing overnight without the need for hiring is I basically built the process out, and then I turned on a Facebook ad, and today I'm basically my my fastest growing market is in the Philippines and Sri Lanka, and I have 0 staff because the technology doesn't work. But again, I built it out in the sense that I know that my value is payment processing, and I can automate that. My value is ID verification, I can automate that. And now I basically just turn on a Facebook campaign and then have basic conversions, and I'm printing money in theory without any employees. Now, obviously you have to maintain the software, and I'll get into that a little bit after, but the perspective of building a business model where I don't need to get to the million or the 10 million mark, I don't necessarily need to hire anybody. That's how I'm thinking, right? Okay, number 3. This is very important. The business must allow testing and validation with very little capital expenditure. So all my companies are startups at one point, and I consider them always startups because they're fully bootstrapped. I don't take any outside money for the reason that I don't need it, because I can test and validate the business with very little money because I can think about it a proper way. So take you back to TN Tech, when we were trying to prove the concept, we found that the reason why we got into the industry at the time was that we wanted to actually put some devices on the table. So when you're in a restaurant and you want a server, you push a button and the server can come. So we said, okay, we're going to manufacture, we're engineers, we're going to design all this stuff. But in the process of doing our due diligence, we saw that the pagers market was undersaturated in Canada. In the US, one pager was selling for $33. In Canada, the same pager was selling for $129. And the reason why is that there's like very little competition. And the guys that were in the game came from actually selling those pagers that, you know, back in the day, you may or may not know. And then they graduated into this on-site paging, which is the new technology for them, but they're still managing it with their old processes, going door to door and basically building relationships, where we came in with a more innovative strategy, you know, subscription-based modeling and channel distribution. Now, at the time, we wanted to prove the concept, and we were talking to manufacturers in Korea, and they had $10,000 minimums, right? So we basically, to get the good margin, right? Obviously, in business, you want to get a good margin, right? So if you want to sell widgets for $50, you want to get it for at least $25 and not $45. So traditionally, we want to buy as much as possible, right? To make sense. But that's the biggest mistake you can ever make. So what we understood is that we didn't prove the concept, and the last thing we wanted was to get stuck with a bunch of inventory, just so because we can have high profit margins. Forget about profit margin, we don't have a profit, right? So what we did is said, okay, fine, we won't buy 10,000, but we will buy a demo, right? So I bought a demo of 10 pagers for $1,000, paid up way above market price for them. But what I did with that demo is I went knocking on doors with general managers, and I sold them the idea with the demo. You want this? Okay, well here, give me a 50% deposit, right? And then I will basically deliver it to you in 2 weeks. And that was the model. You don't have anything now, why can't you wait for 2 weeks? The point for me is that I just literally had a website, and then I had one demo kit, and I had a startup. And I could prove that the value worked. So now I'm selling paper, because that 50% deposit could have been enough to actually buy the product itself, right? So in theory, I'm taking 0 risk. And I think my businesses take very little risk because of this law right here, where I'm not going to go buy inventory to try to make a profit before I even know that somebody even wants it and is willing to pay for it. And this is a big mistake a lot of people make. So back to short-term stays, we got an example for that. Again, the idea that today I'm automatically processing payments, I wouldn't have built the platform and then said that, you know what, this is my business. I would have actually, what I was doing is having somebody manually process payments, brutally manually process payments for my first set of clients at a higher premium, right? Because I got to pay those people. And then as I start to automate it, then I start to be able to reduce my price. But the point is, I was able to, manually sync calendars, right? Somebody says, booking come in, we got to go quickly sync these calendars. We can, we have to process this payment all manual until the business was proven. And that's why it's easy to actually start a successful business, because without losing money, because you can find a strategic way. I got $100, how can I test this business? And your customer doesn't need to know. It just means you have to do a lot of work. And eventually you follow the other laws and you build the automation in place to actually get it to the stage where you're doing nothing. Make sense? Model should leverage existing operational tools, so the only focus is on the true value creation. So a lot of us, like to feel that our businesses and our ideas are unique and it's custom and we need a special bells and whistle, we need a special feature, so let's build it in-house, let's do it ourselves. The problem is that you're not focusing on the value that your business is really doing. So if I take you back to TN Tech, yes, we were sending out pagers automatically in a subscription-based model, but our value is the fact that we had those pagers and that we can package it very easily for the general manager. Our value wasn't the technology that was actually doing the automation. So we went out and found the best CRM tool in the market, Salesforce, subscription-based. We're not paying any capital development. We pay a subscription for $50 a month, pay monthly. So $50 we have the best technology that all the big corporations use. And we basically build around the Salesforce platform. So yes, Salesforce may not have everything that we need day one, but we can make a profit and then build on top of it, right? And build custom features on top of existing operational tools. And this is probably the biggest learning curve for a lot of people because we're always trying to build our full solution and build our full suite, but there's nothing new under the sun. There's things out there that can do what you're doing, and the subscription-based model makes it very easy to start a business today. Now, back to short-term stays, all the things that I'm using to process payments, synchronize calendars, this is not a new problem. Hotels have been doing this for years. Hotels have the issue of multi-bookings and multi-channels. So there's technology that exists. Now it's just taking the same technology and applying it to the short-term rental industry. So I didn't go and reinvent a channel management software. What I did is I found the best out there and I white labeled it, right? So all of a sudden I have the best technology with very little risk because I white labeled it. But what I'm truly solving is a problem that Airbnb hosts, and I'm putting them on a new platform, getting them more bookings. I'm not the expert in synchronizing calendars. I'm just using a company that is the expert. Okay? So this is very important that when you're thinking, what is your true value? And then the day, my value is for TN Tech is simply making the lives easier for the general managers. They don't have to deal with something that they don't care about as much and have to monthly make phone calls. Eliminate that. That's my value. That's it. For short-term stays, my value is getting people more bookings on Airbnb, on the Airbnb listing, and that's it. Everything else, I don't need to. I'm not a technology provider. I'm a service provider. I'm solving that problem. I'm going to find the best companies that do those things and put it all together. Okay? And today, a lot of these companies that have technology platforms have APIs, which means that you can start with the basic and then eventually build on top of their APIs to get exactly what you want. Okay? So talking about like sourcing technology, you kind of find something that works for you today, that's very cheap out of the box, but has the ability for you to grow with in the future with APIs and functionality. Okay? Yeah, so this kind of goes into the same line of the other one of the tools, but the business should only focus on things paying customers will pay for or will save operational time. Ignore the noise. So there's a lot of noises in business. You always think that you could spend a project to add a feature, but nobody cares about it, no one's going to pay for it. Now the idea of Autopilot is that you have to find what works and just do it. And be the best at it and ignore everything else. Because you can spend multiple iterations on a business trying to improve it, trying to get it to the point where you're perfecting it, or you can put it on autopilot and then move on to the next and diversify yourself that way, right? So there's two philosophies here, and I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I'm not just in one business because industries change, right? So even the TN Tech industry has shifted a lot since I started it because now some restaurants you guys are willing to give your cell phone number, that completely eliminates the pager because they can just send you a text. So you can see that when you invest in something, and especially in business, things are not forever. Big companies have to change, and they have to grow, and sometimes they do acquisitions in order to do that because new integrators come in. So when you think about your business, you got to think about it as, let's get in, let's build it, let's maintain it, and then let's maintain it, period. And move on to the next, or look at new ventures to acquire, to constantly innovate, but at the same time, you don't want to focus on the noise just for the sake of getting better, right? You want to make sure you're focused on the value. If you're doing it well, just keep on doing it. The other aspect of operational time is very important. So one of the next slides is going to cover this a little bit more depth, but saving time for your team and manual processes is extremely important. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, the things that you're doing, you don't want to be doing. You want to be outsourcing it, or you want to basically have it fully automated. So those are the things you should be focusing on. Things that customers are willing to pay and things that save you time. Because at the end of the day, you want to make money and you want to save time, right? The next slide here is don't get in the way of your customers or partners. Give them the tools and let them help themselves. Okay, so we all think that our customers are not as smart as us, but you'll be surprised once you give them the tools, they can actually self-serve themselves. And we may be, good examples. Like we could call the 100 number for service and wait 15 minutes to get the answer, or we can go on the online, go on Google and search it and get the answer before you even pick up the phone, right? So we want the option to help ourselves, so don't protect your customers from thinking. Give them the information, and then when they call in for support, you're teaching them how to help themselves. Okay, next time you go to here, the answer was right here. So that way you start to eliminate that bottleneck that we create. We create the bottleneck for ourselves because we feel that the customer can't help themselves. So a good example is, the general managers don't want to order 10 pages a month. And they don't necessarily want to log into a portal to update that. They have to call us. Give them the portal. Give them the link to the portal, let them update it themselves. So they don't even have to call us. Some of them may choose to call, but eventually they realize, you know what, it's faster for me to just go on the portal and take 2 seconds. So creating portals for your partners, creating portals for your customers is the next step, and is the next level to fully automating your business because it intercepts you from being the bottleneck because you have all the information. Okay? So the perfect example is in my short-term stays business, I collect the payments for all my property owners, which means I send the invoices directly to the guest who books the hotel or the apartment, and the property owner has no visibility to that. So the guest and the property owner have communication because obviously they have a check-in, but then the bottleneck comes when the guest says, well, I didn't get the invoice, right? And then the property owner says, well, contact short-term stays. So that becomes a bottleneck because I can just give the property owner access to the invoice to send to their client. And that eliminates that whole interaction. So just thinking about things on that level, eliminate yourselves and do not make yourself the bottleneck in a business. Just find ways to make people solve their own problems. And obviously some people are going to come to you anyways, but it's going to be drastically less. And when they come to you, educate them on how not to come to you next time, right? Okay. This is important for me, and avoid meetings at all costs. Get your answers via written communication. So if you come from the corporate culture, a lot of things are built on the sense of meetings and face-to-face. And I agree meetings face-to-face is good for relationship building, but when it comes to an operational perspective, it's really inefficient. Because sometimes you can answer and get the answer to your question before you even have the time to even actually meet. So take the time to articulate a proper email with bullet points or numbers and ask your questions, and you could answer the questions well before you even have the time to meet. I have a certain philosophy in business. I tell my team this all the time. Difficult takes a day, impossible takes a week. So things that are difficult, we solve in a day. Things that are easy, we solve in an hour. We don't have to wait a week to meet to even discuss the problem. Let's just knock it down. So the whole philosophy of moving quickly and solving problems, the iterative process is very important. And the fact that I avoid meetings is the major part of that, the ability you can move very quickly. So emails is the key communication tool here. So I kind of rushed through these slides because I want to give you guys the full depth, but then I want to deep dive into specific questions that you guys may have, or any questions you guys have of business models that I can kind of help you guys apply the methodology to them. So I want to save most of the time for that. So I'll open up the floor and we just kind of keep it casual and fire away. Okay, any questions?
So when you were saying that thing about, like when you were walking around with the pagers and you just had a website and you were kind of selling them to them, but you didn't actually have the product, you were just kind of getting them to pre-order.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of like a form of an early adopter then, right? So like they're...
So I actually had I bought a demo. So
Okay.
I bought a demo product, so I had the physical demo for them.
Yeah.
And then they saw the product, they saw it work, I plugged it in, and then they were buying that, right? But I couldn't just give it to them tomorrow. But I had to use the demo for the next sales call, right?
Okay, yeah.
So it's in that sense, they're not really adopters. It's just that the philosophy there was I didn't have a bunch of inventory because delivery time wasn't important at the time,
Okay.
and margins weren't important at the time. At that time, proving the concept was important,
Yeah.
right?
So that was kind of like how you validated the idea.
That's how I validated it.
Okay.
Yeah, and the idea could have been validated in theory.
Yeah.
Now, yes, people were willing to buy this. Now, the second question is, am I able to sell this?
Yeah.
Right? Or do I have the sales team able to sell this? Right? So, like, you can, in theory, yeah, it's been work because people buy it in the U.S., but can my company sell this?
Yeah.
Right? So, it really comes down to like validating it down to like, you know, a perfect experiment where there's no no room for failure. So when I make that $10,000 order, I know with a fact that I'm going to sell it, and there's no risk in that from that perspective because I got rid of all the risk by experimenting and actually doing it with the variables that I have to the much of my ability, right? So the challenge there would have been, oh, if they came to me and said, yes, I would buy this thing, but I need it tomorrow. Okay, then that would have been, you know, a failure in the business model because now I know I need to have inventory before I sell, right? But that never happened. 2 weeks waiting time was no problem in that case, right?
You mentioned that industry is constantly changing, so you have to adjust your business. And you brought up the restaurants are now using cell phones. How did you adjust to that?
Yeah, so so there's a challenge with cell phones. So a lot of the big chains are still not using cell phones, but it's just a threat to the industry. So the way I adjusted is that I basically, we had the website, we got a lot of leads coming in online, we had the distribution with Cisco. We eventually outsourced our fulfillment. So we basically became like a website and a virtual office, right? When we had a guy that took in the leads from the website, made the phone calls, and then we had the ordering system, a separate company, do the fulfillment. So it became very low cost business, and it said, you know what, we did what we got to do, and today we still have big contracts that's generating revenue, but it's not growing at a normal rate. So my whole perspective is when I move on to another business, is yes, I can stay here and ride this out and maybe make an extra 10%, or I can go into a new area and make a 90% return. So the whole perspective is that I'm not married to one business per se, but I have a good cash flow base here to sustain my lifestyle, and then I can move on to the next for the growth. So I didn't see that as a growing industry, so that's why I sort of phased out and sort of kept the pipeline going and maintaining it, but not necessarily trying to build it and make other ones per se, right?
Have you considered selling it if it's not?
So sold a portion, so yeah, so I divested a little bit, but yeah, but it's still good cash flow, so I keep a good portion of it, yeah. Any other questions?
When did you start using Salesforce?
So Salesforce was TN Tech, so 2008. And today I still use Salesforce heavily. One of my other businesses that came in the process of it is a Salesforce consulting firm. So I have a company that's called NG Cloud. That's a Salesforce partner. And we do Salesforce implementations. And the reason why I did that, one of the things that I believe in is to work to learn. So now, like short-term stays, all my integration happens in Salesforce on their platform version. So basically at $50 a month, I basically have full API connections with all my systems, and it was a good tool for me. So I've been using it for almost 10, 15 years, 12 years now.
What stage do you get into that? Like into Salesforce, at what stage of like the business?
When would I?
Yeah.
When my business model?
So like what stage of growth of your business would you?
At day one, I
Yeah.
build my business like on the group edition if I need to, and then I just move up to enterprise. If you guys know Salesforce very well, I'm assuming you guys do. But yeah, I build businesses knowing that I need the systems around it. And you know, even the free trial period of 30 days, I can prove the concept within 30 days if I plan it right. It's a de-risk, but the reason why I like to build around systems and tools is because when you start to grow, now you have a bottleneck because I need to find the tools. And you kind of sometimes, some tools are limited. But if you build around the tool, then you know the limits from the jump, right? So you can kind of solve for those problems. Versus the alternative is to hire a developer, go through a 6 weeks requirements gathering session, build something custom, and then you realize, okay, the business changed next week, right? And then you put all this sunk investment in, and it's hard to recover from it. Versus, I'm only sinking $50 a month, right? So if I want to drop Salesforce, I can, but at the same time, I'm going to build and one less thing to worry about while you focus on getting that first and second and third and 500th customer, right?
Excuse me. It seems you focus really on rapid prototyping and proof of concept. And one of the companies I work with is its value comes from a user base. So how do I prove a concept when it comes to mobile apps and user base? Because it needs to grow. It has to hit 1 million users before we get any revenue. How do I know I can hit that 1 million users? And when do I know I have to pivot?
Yeah, so that's a challenge. People come to me with ideas all the time that have that. I'm very skeptical of that because it breaks the law.
Oh,
right?
Of course, yeah.
So one of the things I challenge them is don't get your own user base. So if it integrate with Facebook and try to leverage their user base and focus on that integration point and see if you can get them to convert or stay on that platform and use your service. I don't know what it is, but I always think on those lines of don't try to reinvent the wheel to get get them to log into another system, go to another platform and extract the value there.
Okay.
Right? So kind of like my business model is that Airbnb is really great. So instead of me building a new platform, right, to solve the problem and they come list on my platform, I'm just taking what your Airbnb listing and I'm pushing it into my other channels. Right? So like I don't actually have to do anything to prove my concept because I can give you the results immediately. So again, I think it's a tough one, but if you can find a way to go where your customers are and let them stay there, to give them the value, then you have potentially learn quicker versus doing it yourself and spending the money on marketing. Right? But I don't like to spend the money on marketing up front before I make money. I try to be profitable like day one, day two, the way I build a business model. Right? Anything else? Questions? Every time. Yeah, so we have about 30 minutes, so anything,
Fire away, guys, you only get this guy for another half hour. I mean, somebody came from a long ways
So
away.
your
to ask questions.
Airbnb thing, or like the short-term stays that you have, so do you just run so you use Airbnb's API to, or like how does that work? So like you just take the Airbnb listing and put it onto your site, but then like wouldn't the payments to be processed through Airbnb?
Yeah, so Airbnb is separate, so
Yeah.
Airbnb bookings. Now, if you have it listed on Airbnb, I will take your listing details, so you give me your link,
Yeah.
and I'll extract the details from that link, and I'll list you on
Okay.
Booking.com, I'll list you on Expedia, I'll list you on Hotels.com. So now those bookings that come in are net new for you,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And when those bookings come in, I push through APIs where they have an iCal, Airbnb to block off your calendar on Airbnb, right? And then I will pay you out on that source. So now you get paid from Airbnb and you get paid from short-term stays.
Okay.
Right? And the idea is for you get higher occupancy rate, and more bookings. That's your value add, right?
Should they pay you first?
So the guest pays. I collect the money from the guest, I hold the money, and then I pay out, just like Airbnb does.
Yeah.
No different.
I just use Airbnb, that's why.
As a guest,
No, as a host.
as a host, yeah, so perfect. Yeah. And you just on Airbnb?
And VRBO.
VRBO, yeah. And
HomeAway.
HomeAway,
Yeah.
okay, good. Yeah, HomeAway just got bought by Expedia,
Okay.
so you see some changes there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I stick with all those channels.
Okay, cool.
Do you have any advice on looking for these opportunities and looking for needs? I'm sure you're always aware of where there's a need.
Yeah, I have 10 ideas that are fit this model that I just don't have the time to execute per se. So I think a lot of the problems that I've been able to solve are really problems that I sort of face and I see other people facing. So I think it's really identifying problems is starting something and then like anything, right? Or picking an industry and just getting involved in it and you'll see the problems very evidently. And if you can find a business model, like in my that fits the autopilot laws that solves that problem, then I'll go at it, right? So I'll give you some inputs now, like the short-term rental industry, okay? One of the biggest challenges is check-ins. So the problem is hotels do a really great job because they have a front desk. So when you're checking in, you go to your front desk, you get your key, you go to the room. The problem is with Airbnb, there's no standardization, right? So some people have basically, if you have a house, you can have an auto lock where it's like remotely. If it's a condo, sometimes you can't leave the key with the concierge. And sometimes you get a last minute booking, you don't know who's coming until you're gone. So people leave the door open, there's a lockbox outside. There's no consistency. So when I use Airbnb as a user, I don't know exactly what I'm getting. I don't know what the process is going to be. And I think the industry needs some standardization there. So what would be nice is if you think about it as we had like literally kiosks or like anywhere there's a major airport or like wherever there's a national car rental, for instance, or you can go and pick up your key and check in, verify ID there, get your key and go to your unit. Like things like that is problems that I see, is problems that I face would be nice for the industry to solve. But I think these are things that I'm coming across because I'm solving those problems, and obviously I have a lot of other problems to solve, but I think if you pick an industry and you start thinking about how can this be easier, would somebody pay for this? How can I save someone time? How can I save somebody money? If you ask yourself those questions, you'll always find an opportunity, right? Anything else?
Yeah. For the page of business, did you design and build out the page from scratch, or
No.
did you just buy pages already built?
Again, white label, so we got the manufacturer, and we put our sticker on top of it, right? Technology existed, it's doing well everywhere, don't need to go through that development path, right?
Right.
I'm just filling the need in the market. I wasn't trying to make the pagers better, because that wasn't the problem. The problem is they weren't aware of it and they never had them, right? So again, to keep that in mind, like, what is your real problem, right? Before you go on to reinvent the wheel, what are you truly solving? Because, the pages exist today, but they don't go far enough. Well, general managers don't care. So you go build it out, and you're not getting business for that, right? But you spent all this time, now you spent all this time making back the money that you spent, right? So payback period has to be very short, right? Because you're thinking about what the true value is, and you're finding how to solve the true problem and not be an inventor and make it on Wikipedia for inventing something that never sold, right? We're business, it's about making the money, right? And I'm an engineer, and that's coming from me, so. Anything else? Last time I had
I had a question, it's less about the business, more about your communication and meetings. So how do you get a lot of brushback and like from your clients and your partners as far as, how do you handle those folks that really want to push for meetings? They want that FaceTime, but you know that you only meet them for 30 seconds.
Usually, meetings, I only have meetings when it's like really relationship building, so it's like it's front end, like kind of do the work once to build that relationship, or if something's really complex, right? And it's like it's hard to, because you're not on the same. So if I'm talking to another developer, I don't have to have a physical meeting. But if I'm talking development to somebody who completely doesn't have no idea, it's gonna be very hard to articulate that by email. So I think when you're in operations, usually people are talking that are in the same, the same sort of arena. So it's easier for that communication, but I agree. If there's a communication gap and language gap in the sense of like concepts, a physical meeting might be required to explain it and maybe get on the whiteboard or have more patience in the process. But operations, usually that cross-functional is just day-to-day stuff, right? So that's how it's avoided, but it's obviously necessary sometimes. And then if it is, then hop on and join me, hop on a Skype, where the availability is easier. Because now when you're planning a physical meeting, I got to think about, okay, I got to get somewhere, I got to get in the car. There's more constraints, so it just slows down development, right? So it's like literally 15 minutes. I don't need an hour, right? Let's do 15 minutes, get on the phone right now, solve the problem, and then we'll move on to the next, right? So that's kind of the philosophy there with that.
Okay.
You got a question?
Yeah, it was just in regards to the channel sales and building relationships.
Yeah.
What do you know about like leveraging already existing like big manufacturers or like big box businesses?
When you say manufacturers, like leveraging what capacity?
So as far as sourcing their product, like building a relationship so your channel goes through them instead of you directly.
Sorry, okay, so the manufacturer is a widget. A manufacturing company is producing a widget,
Yeah.
right? And you want them to produce something for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
they have an already existing business, and then you're trying to.
But is it a new widget that you want them to produce for you? Or is it the same widget that they're already producing?
Yeah, just a collection of their widgets.
Okay, good, perfect. So the manufacturers have one objective, to sell, right? And they know that they're in a big business of white labeling. It's a big thing in the industry. So they want you as a client, and they want to say, if you have a custom requirement, to put a sticker on it or to make a simple modification, they want that business. So most big companies, they don't actually do their own manufacturing. They do a lot of white labeling because they don't need to get into that business. So what you're asking for is a main industry that exists, and it's white labeling. So if you talk to a manufacturer and you reach out to them, do you do white labeling? And then they'll say yes, most likely, and then you say, well, what are your pricing for white labeling? And then it's probably a little markup for the white labeling, and then they send you the requirements. So whether it's a sticker, or it's a logo, or it's a whatever, decal, whatever it is that you're putting for your company, they do that. So that's a standard industry that exists, and it's a main part of business, right? Anything else?
I've got one more. So my company does virtual reality,
Mhm.
and I've created a specialty software that allows anyone who's creating 360-degree video content to turn it into a virtual reality experience on just about any headset on the market. But right now I'm doing mostly client-based business to business. So they'll actually come to me or I'll go to them, and then I will do the coding myself with the software that I've created. It's gotten it down so that I can do a basic project in about an hour, and I can charge an outrageous amount of money for that. It's great. But I'm sick of doing that coding stuff, and I'm debating whether or not I move towards an automated software where I just license that software to these artists, give it a huge, great user interface and a huge ease of use so they can do it themselves, or if I hire someone and I just take some money off the top for each.
Great. So hiring somebody is a challenge, because then you're always going to be, for the business to live longer than you, you're always going to have to hire somebody. Because people are going to come for different reasons, they have different motives, and they're in an employee mindset. So the cost there is that you're going to have to find the right person, and then keep that right person, and then eventually lose that right person, find another one. So that's not an autopilot model. If you go the route of giving an opportunity to other people, right? They're entrepreneurs, it's their business, and you're just supporting them and their business. And that sense, you're not necessarily taking obviously you're now not taking the quality risk, so it might not be under your brand, so you're not concerned about that, but you get the license revenue, and your value is the technology, right? So the autopilot model is, yes, create an opportunity for other people to make a lot of money, kind of like what Uber does and what Airbnb does, and then you just support them making money. And then you don't have to worry about anything except, maybe brokering the deals and taking a commission out of brokering the deals and licensing the technology. So you would have less pain points from an HR perspective, and you have more longevity. And in my opinion, you have more value, because if you hire somebody, then you need to hire to grow overnight. You need to find another person.
Gotcha.
But tomorrow you can put out an ad, find all these graphic designers, and grow globally overnight. So the autopilot model is the first one you suggested.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, well, we'll wrap up, and then if you guys want to come to me privately with any questions, I'm here. Okay, thank you guys for your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.